Okay, so when I went into Lowe's, I was not looking for a faucet. However, when I saw this completely mangled Delta Trask Touch2O regular 530 on for 199 Canadian, I couldn't stop myself but look at it. This is exactly the condition it was in the store. And 199 Canadian is about 150 bucks US for reference sake here. I did take a look at a few things in the store, but I didn't totally tear it apart. They said I could take it back if it was completely jacked up or if parts were missing or whatever. So first thing I'm gonna do is actually pull everything out, and before I even try to set anything up, I'm just gonna inspect everything, make sure that it's not in bad shape or parts didn't fall out of the box, that kind of thing. Obviously, I'm going to need the instructions so that I can cross-reference all the steps and make sure there's nothing missing, as well as look at the faucet handle and all the hoses and stuff, component parts, and make sure that they're not mangled. So this box was clearly kicked around a warehouse for a while. It's obviously wet. The instructions inside are all crinkly and crunchy, so those were wet too. So I'm not really sure what happened to this thing. The unmangled version of this is 530 bucks at Lowe's right now, so it is what it is. And ultimately everything works out well, so it's basically $330 off for a bad box on this thing. Everything's in good condition. I'm using a couple of adjustable wrenches and then one screwdriver. That's pretty much it. First thing I got to do is turn off the water, obviously, to get the old tap out of there. Fortunately, I have water shutoffs, and this is probably my only sink with actual water shutoffs that work. So turn off the water for both the hot and cold. Pull the hoses off for the old tap. They're a little bit stuck on there, so I do use an adjustable wrench. Channel locks would also work. Now my taps don't turn off fully. There's a very slow drip out of them, and I'm assuming the cold line is dripping because the refrigerator is also hooked up to it, but it doesn't have that shut off, so it's probably getting a little bit of backflow out of the refrigerator as well. So I just threw some paper towels down there. Removal of the old faucet is super easy. You don't need any tools whatsoever. It's just one big plastic nut. So you could actually just grab it with your hands and twist it off and then feed it down the hoses and pull it all the way off. So that's simple, and that took about 30 seconds. So that one's out now, and I'm ready to move on to the installation of the new one. The first step of the installation is just take the entire faucet assembly, shove all the hoses down the hole, and just pull everything through. Pretty straightforward. Now, because I have a stone or granite countertop, I don't have to worry about the faucet touching anything metal. Obviously, if you have a metal sink and it's touching the metal on the sink, you could have issues with the touch faucets. So you have to make sure that the threaded metal portion of that thing is not touching anything on the sink. It does come with a handy tool to screw the nut on that's going to secure the faucet to the sink. And to tighten the entire faucet down, I'm going to put on the mounting bracket, which is the square plastic piece. And it does have to get oriented in a specific direction. You can see the braided hose was fed through the bracket, and then all the PEX tubing actually has a little slot on the one side of the bracket. So that does not get threaded through that hole with everything. And then I'm just going to take that brass nut and I'm going to screw that onto the bottom of the faucet and tighten it up until the faucet is secured against the counter. Now you do have to make sure that the faucet is oriented straight. There's like a little, it says Delta on the faucet. Obviously that's going to point towards the front, and there's a little light on it as well, and that has to point forward. Obviously it's pretty easy to center this thing, particularly because I have cupboard doors on both sides of my sink for some reason. I'm not really sure why, but it definitely makes installing a faucet a lot easier when you can access it from both sides. Now there's two screws on the bottom of the bracket, and you just tighten those up. Very straightforward, and it goes on nice and secure. Next thing up, I'm going to put a ferrule and a check valve onto each of my water lines. They're not specific hot and cold, they're just generic, so you can put either one on either one. So first thing I'm doing is positioning the ferrule, and then next thing I'm doing is just screwing the two check valves onto my existing plumbing. And once the check valves are in place, all I'm doing is taking the PEX tubing that's coming off of the faucet and installing that onto the top of the check valve. Now you do have to get the hot and cold correct here, or your faucet is obviously going to be backwards when it comes to hot and cold water. but one of the tubes is red on the inside, the other one's blue. Should be a dead giveaway. And I'm using channel locks and an adjustable wrench. Channel locks to hold the check valve and the adjustable wrench to tighten down the water lines. Once those are installed, I'm just going to turn on the hot and cold water. With everything hooked up and the water turned on, I'm going to flush the supply lines. I'm going to hold a container under the outlet fitting and then just reach up and turn the tap on the hot and cold setting. And that's going to get all of the air out of the lines, and you can see that that water is actually kind of dirty. So definitely flushing the lines has a benefit to it. All right, with the lines flushed, and you can see that I had to loop these lines around. They don't recommend cutting them. They just say put them in a loop. Now I'm just connecting the solenoid to the outlet fitting, and it's just held in place by that little blue clip. Just make sure it gets pushed in securely. I then take the hose weight and slide it onto the hose. And sort of the last hookup step for the hoses is to take the end of the hose and slide it onto the solenoid as well. Just make sure everything's firmly seated, and then there's another blue clip that holds everything together. So super fast and easy actually to set this thing up. Now for batteries, this can take AA's, which came with it, or C cells. Obviously I'm just going to use the AA's for now, but when these die I'm going to get the C cells because they're supposed to last 3 times as long. So just dump those in there and then connect the battery top. So that's it, easy to do the batteries. I'm now going to connect the LED wire, which is on the faucet, to the solenoid. Obviously it went right where that blue LED light is shining. And the last thing I'm doing is connecting this push clip onto the faucet shank. So that big threaded faucet shank is the piece that you don't want touching other metal, because obviously now with that push clip on it, it's now touch sensitive. So if I had a metal sink and the shank was touching the metal on the sink, it may not work, or maybe the faucet would turn on if you just touched the metal on the sink and not the faucet handle. I could mount the battery pack to the side, and maybe that's something I'll do in the future, but for right now I'm not going to do that. So I'm just going to test it out by tapping it a few times. You can see if you put it on hot and let it run, there's actually an LED that's going to sense the temperature, and it turns red or blue depending on the temperature. And with the water running, I'm just going to poke around here underneath the sink, make sure there's no leaks and nothing weird's happening. Obviously this is the part I was very concerned about with this completely smashed up faucet box, but absolutely no issues. Everything works perfectly, and quite honestly, I was a little bit surprised. I thought this was going to go bad on me, but it did not, and I was more than happy with saving $330 for just a damaged box that I'm going to throw at recycling day anyway, so not bad at all. And there is a time delay between when I make these and do the voiceover and stuff, so it is still working fine and it's never leaked. Overall, I'm happy with the quality of the product. I think Delta made a really good faucet, and the installation was very fast and easy. Anyway, thanks for checking out my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.